Rams house. Welcome into a brand new episode of the Rams Report presented by Prize Picks. Today, guys, we are talking about some draft rumors around what the Rams intend to do in the draft. A couple new insider mock drafts cluing us into that. We talked about a few yesterday, and then 3 more came out today. Just our luck with that timing. So we're going to hit those right off the top. We're going to talk about who they had going. Brugler, McShay, and Mel Kiper all putting out mock drafts today. So we'll talk about all 3 of those. One of those is a 7-round mock draft. So a lot of fun to be had on that portion of today's show. Then we've got some more rumors to discuss. Some from Adam Schefter about Makai Lemon, a top Rams draft target, someone we've talked about a lot on the show, potentially falling down draft boards, what that might mean for the Rams, or whether or not it's even true. And then Monroe Freeling potentially rising the Rams draft board, being somebody that they're interested in at 13, and of course what that would mean for this team. But let's get started with Dane Brugler's mock draft. So here's what he had, and again, he was the only one of our insiders today that was bold enough to do a 7-round mock draft. He had Jordyn Tyson at 13, which, you know, I have my reservations about Tyson at 13. We'll dive a little bit deeper on that a little later on today's show. But Anthony Hill Jr., fantastic pick. Absolutely excellent player there. We haven't talked about him too much because honestly, I just don't think he's going to be a realistic option for us at 61. I think he'll be off the board earlier in the second round. And as much as the Oklahoma Sooner in me hates to praise a Texas player, if there's one worth praising in this year's class, it's probably Anthony Hill Jr. He is a really, really good linebacker. Daylen Everette is also fantastic. Someone that we have picked in Rams mock drafts would be an excellent fit for what the Rams are doing corner-wise. Isaiah World, as we get into the day threes, we've picked him much earlier than the 6th round. So another pick that I really, really like. I think the value there would be fantastic. Cade Klubnik in the 7th, again, somebody I would think about taking, like, hey, if we're sitting there and round 6 and he's there, bang, I would make that move. So getting him in round 7, another really, really good value pick. J. Michael Sturdivant out of Florida by way of UCLA. And I think a couple of transfers in addition to that, another solid pick. And then Aidan Hubbard, the edge out of Northwestern. So I have my injury reservations about Jordyn Tyson at the top of this draft. We've had that conversation ad nauseum about what that might mean. But if he could stay healthy, he'd be fantastic. And the rest of these picks are A's. This is an A-plus mock draft in my opinion. But I want to hear from you guys before we get into the rest of today's show. What would you grade Dane Brugler's mock draft? Let me know in the comments while I give a shout out to the sponsor of today's video. That is Prize Picks. Today's show is sponsored by Prize Picks, America's #1 sports picks app. Prize Picks is the place to go if you love daily fantasy sports or you just want to make watching sports even more exciting. Player picks are on fire right now with playoff basketball getting going and the baseball season starting too. There's no better place to cash in on all that action than Prize Picks. Just pick 2 to 6 players and select more or less on stat projections, including points, rebounds, assists, three-pointers, and several others across all sports. If you're more of a baseball guy, you could choose stats such as hits, home runs, and strikeouts. I've got a 3-player lineup for tonight's action, guys. If you want to tail my lineup on today's show, I'm going with Jalen Suggs is more on 2.5 3-pointers. I'm going with Paolo Banchero's more on 5.5 assists. And I'm going with Draymond Green's more on 12.5 rebounds and assists. This is a $20 lineup to win $170. So like I said, you guys could tail me or fade me on that. Whatever you do, just download it or download the Prize Picks app today and use code HMA when you use your first $5 lineup to receive $50 in lineups. One more time, that is code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to get an extra $50 in lineups with Prize Picks. The clickable link to download the app is in the comments and in the description of today's show. Big shout out to Prize Picks. We really appreciate them supporting our show, and let's keep it rolling today. Like I said, Tyson is tricky here, but the rest of this mock draft absolutely rocks. I would give it a very, very solid A, maybe even as high as an A+. Because again, while I do have injury concerns about Tyson, he's still a great player. The only thing that I have that hangs me up on him, if I'm completely honest with you guys, is the injury issues. It's the nightmare situation, this dream that keeps me up at night that one day Puka will be hurt and Jordyn Tyson will be hurt at the exact same time and we'll just have no solid receiving options because this will be in a post-Devontae Adams world. And that just that would be a realistic scenario if you went with Tyson. It's something to absolutely consider with his profile. But let's see who the other insiders, Mel Kiper and Todd McShay, had. We're going to start with Mel Kiper's mock draft. At 13th, he did a 2-rounder. At 13th, he went with Makai Lemon, a pick that I absolutely love. You guys know I'm a huge Makai Lemon fan. For me, my draft board at receiver, which I do believe is the position the Rams should be most interested in targeting, has been and continues to be Carnell Tate number 1, but we know that that's a very low chance. We know the Ohio State Buckeye is likely to be off the board before we're there at 13, and then Makai Lemon, number 2. If you can get the USC product, I had a really great conversation today with Blaine Grisack of Sports Illustrated about what it might mean to bring this guy in, and I think it would be an absolutely excellent addition, He and I both came to the conclusion that while there aren't a ton of rookies in this class that can have that day one impact, Makai is absolutely one of them. And then in the second round, someone that we reported on the combine meeting of with the Los Angeles Rams, Josiah Trotter, the Missouri linebacker, another really solid pick in my opinion. Again, doesn't exactly fill the coverage need that you have at linebacker right now, but he's incredibly young with a lot of development runway in my opinion. I do think in due time he could do that as well. And day one, he is an excellent run defender, really going to help you out in that area. Todd McShay, just a 1-round mock draft from him. He had us also going with Makai Lemon for his mock draft for the Ringer. And again, I love this pick. Not too much more to say about it. It is just an excellent direction to go in for the Rams. I know some Rams fans have reservations about the idea of, hey, if we go Makai Lemon, is that going to move Puka Nacua back out of the role of slot receiver? And this is something else that me and Blaine talked about. And I really do feel like, while I understand how successful the Rams offense was with Nacua as a slot receiver and why some people might want to keep that going because it worked last year, he's at his most valuable for you on the outside, on the boundary, where he can draw more attention, vacuum that up, and open up the middle of the field for everybody else. And if once those guys get going, that's going to get one-on-one opportunities for Puka Nacua. It's about the value he brings to the offense, not just for himself and the production that he'll be able to get, because trust me, we all know Puka is going to get his. That guy's unstoppable, but it's about how he can best support the entire team and lead to us getting more W's. And I think that role is on the outside with a phenomenal slot weapon like Makai Lemon, which this team just didn't have outside of Puka last year. But as we keep rolling into today's video, we're going to talk draft rumors in just 1 minute. If you're enjoying the show already, if you've made it into this point, make sure you hit that subscribe button because, guys, we've got a lot more draft content cooked up for you. We got another 7-round mock draft coming out on Friday, just 2 days away from that. We got a 7-round mock draft come out on Tuesday as well, so 2 7-round mocks plus an additional 3-round mock tomorrow. We will be live on this channel as well as on Main, making the picks for the Rams alongside the rest of the Chat Sports channels, team-to-team experts for every single team, making picks and projecting what their teams might do, making trades as well. I could tell you guys there's been a lot of buzz around the offices about the trades that are getting made. We've got some crazy stuff in store for you. So don't miss that one tomorrow at 2 p.m. Central Time. That's 12 p.m. Pacific Time for those of you out in the Los Angeles area. We can't wait to see you then. It'll be a lot of fun. But let's keep rolling. So Adam Schefter was talking about the idea that players are sliding in the draft, players are falling in the draft, which I think in and of itself is kind of a funny conversation that we can have a little bit afterwards. But first, let's just acknowledge Makai Lemon was the guy that he talked about. He was the guy that came up for him when he was asked who's falling on draft boards. He said a couple of teams have said Makai Lemon, the USC receiver. I'm like, really? They're like, oh yeah, he's falling. Now I will say this. Last year, I heard something similar about Tetairoa McMillan. And then, lo and behold, right before the draft, I'm hearing that the Broncos are interested, the Niners are interested, and they didn't even have the chance to get him because obviously he would end up going in the top 10 to the Panthers. So this player that other teams felt was falling all of a sudden went high. So to me, this feels like a late smokescreen. And I think what's also funny about this whole conversation is the idea of players falling and rising on draft boards. And that, to be completely honest with you, isn't really happening at this point in the draft cycle for NFL teams. It's more of a just catching up process for media people like ourselves and like Adam Schefter that, hey, you actually have this guy a little bit higher than the vast majority of NFL teams do, or at least we think the vast majority of NFL teams do, because that's the other part about this. Well, you've probably heard it reported as Adam Schefter says Makai Lemon is falling in the draft. Blank, period, headline, underdog, NFL tweet. If you follow those guys, which, hey, they do great work aggregating a lot of important content, but there's a lot more depth and context there, right? After we listen to that full quote, he mentions what he heard about Tetairoa McMillan last season, which ended up being completely untrue. The idea that Tetairoa McMillan was falling in the draft when he ultimately ended up going in exactly the range that everybody expected him to, if not even a little bit earlier. I don't think this is true about Makai Lemon. I think this is a late smokescreen because, to be honest with you guys, I think there are a lot of teams that are drooling about the idea of adding Makai Lemon to their offense. I think he is one of the most appealing players in this entire draft class. In a draft class that isn't that strong, where the consensus is, hey, there's not that many guys this year that feel like surefire home runs. I think he is one. And I think that has teams going, how can I get him to fall into my range? What can I put out there that's going to get him to trickle down into my range? And I think we've seen a lot of that around him this entire draft cycle. It seems to plague him, in my opinion. But what doesn't plague him is bad football. When I turn on the tape, I just see the same guy I've seen throughout this entire draft process. Nothing about that has changed. The tape is fantastic. His ability with the football in his hands after the catch is, I believe, the best in this entire class. I think he is an unbelievable weapon for you. I think he is an incredible football player. And I think he would be an excellent addition to this offense that brings a lot to this team. But maybe receiver isn't the direction the Rams want to go in. We've been hearing a lot lately about Monroe Freeling and just about the offensive tackle position in general in connection with the Rams. And I know my usual reaction to this has been a combination of disgust and dismissal, but we're going to engage with it a little bit today, as we have a little bit earlier this week as well. And it's not because I think it's 100% true, but I do think it's worth considering. I do think the Rams are interested in a tackle in this year's class. That whole conversation seems to just be building too much steam to be ignored, building up too much smoke to say, hey, maybe there's no fire there, if you know what I'm saying. I think there is something to this conversation. At the very least, the Rams want depth for this position, and they should want depth for this position. David Quessenberry should not be your direct backup. No offense to David Quessenberry. I do think he is he's probably a fine person. He is not capable of starting at the NFL level if we have injuries come up. We need something there. And ideally, it's a long-term piece that could maybe fill roles as you continue to fill out or figure out who's going to be in the long-term picture for the Rams. And there's the rub. Warren McClendon and Steve Avila are two conversations that I think you have to have right now about how do the Rams feel about these guys for the long term. Obviously, Avila's been a starting piece on this team for a long time now in various roles. Got going at center, kicked over to left guard. We've seen him thrive at both of those positions. Warren McClendon just got going last season as a replacement to Rob Havenstein and did great in the regular season before a little bit of struggle in the playoffs. Do the Rams have question marks just about the depth of this team and the future beyond maybe Steve Avila leaving? Or is it a question mark about whether or not Warren McClendon is going to be the starter? Or, alternative third option, this is all a smokescreen. I don't know. You can decide for yourself on that one. I do think there's a little bit of weight to this conversation, though. I expect a tackle at some point in the draft. But let's talk about 13. What position do you think the Rams should add? Feels like we're down to two that are really in the conversation seriously, unless somebody crazy slides to us that we just couldn't have accounted for, like a Reuben Bain or a David Bailey. Offensive tackle or wide receiver? What do you want? Let me know in the comments. Give me an OT for offensive tackle. Give me a WR for a wide receiver, the positional abbreviations. And that's going to do it for us on today's episode of the Rams Report. As always, we thank you for spending your time with us, and we will see you in the next one. Let's go, Rams.